Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to download the data from the World Values Survey that you need to complete Assignment 1. At this point I assume that you have looked at the Engelhardt article and the York and Dunlap article. So let's find the World Values Survey online. Open up your web browser and you can just search, I'm in Chrome at least, for World Values Survey. Should come up right there. You want to go down to, if you're not familiar with it or you didn't read the other stuff, you can go through and see about the World Values Survey here and who we are, what we do, that sort of stuff. I'm going to go straight to the data and documentation just to show you the nuts and bolts. So we go to data and documentation and we're going to do online analysis. So we're going to go right here. I'm going to click on the survey that's used in both of the studies. So York and Dunlap use several different World Values Survey waves, but Engelhardt only uses the 1990-1991 wave. So we'll just click on that. Select all the countries here. In doing this, you may notice something if you looked at the Engelhardt article. Engelhardt lists a lot more countries as having responses to this survey than you'll see here. Notably missing are a bunch of Western European countries. I'll give you those data at the end of all of this. I'm not exactly sure why they're excluded from this subset, but it's not that big of a deal. All right, so after you click all the countries, hit next. Now you get to the survey question section, and you'll see that there's a bunch of different surveys or questions on the World Values Survey about a bunch of different things. Some of these we may come back to at later points in the semester. If you're working on your own projects and other classes, whether comparative or otherwise, this could be a resource for you to use if you feel comfortable using the survey instruments. Okay, so what we want to look for here is we want to look for the particular question that's in Table 1 of Engelhardt, and that is the question about whether people are willing to pay higher taxes if they believe those taxes would go to protect the environment. So we'll search for a key word here that will help us find that, and that's just taxes. Okay. And you'll see that it searches and finds 2 survey questions with the word tax in it. Cheating on your taxes isn't relevant for us here, although it might be interesting to see what people think about that. Instead, variable 13 is what we want. So we're going to click on that and go to show. And what you see here is you see survey responses. Right? This is another one of these kind of surveys that uses a 5-point scale, or in this case, I guess, a 4-point scale. And you see the percentage of people in each country that give each type of response. Right? In this particular setup of the table, if you go down, you'll see that all of these should add up to about 100, or 100% are all people. Right? So we have answers for Argentina, Brazil, etc. Now, it turns out that this way of presenting the data is kind of clunky. So what we really want is we're going to put we want a cleaner table. To do that, click on this exchange rows and columns. We put the countries in the rows and then the answer responses in the columns. So here you see now we've got all of the different countries, and we can compare, right, what percent in each country, right, answered that they strongly agreed with the statement that they would accept increased taxes if they were used to prevent pollution. And you can see there's some variation here, right? In Brazil, there's 44% that do. In Japan, there's a very small percentage that do. This total over here, don't worry about now. This is the number of people that were surveyed. We can talk about that in class, and for purposes of this assignment, the fact that these differ is not really that important. Okay, so you've got the answers here. So we want to save these answers. So you come up here and you can save it either as a PDF file or as an Excel file. I'm going to pick Excel because I want to mess with these data later. So you get a little file here. Make sure that you put it in a folder that, you know, for this class or something on your computer so that you can access it easily. Okay, so if you don't believe that the saving actually saved a file, I'll show you. We're going to open that up again. Open the folder you put it in. Mine. And here's what you'll find. Right? And if you compare this to what's on the web page, you'll see that it's exactly the same thing. Now, the important comparison to make here at this point is to see what these responses look like compared to the Engelhardt paper. Right? And so to do that, I've got the Engelhardt paper right here. I'm going to go to the second table in Engelhardt, Table 2, willingness to sacrifice, right? He shows the percentage of people willing to pay taxes or higher taxes to prevent pollution. Right? Now, if we look, so now we can directly compare, right, the percentages that he has with the percentages that we found when we went and looked up the survey. And in principle, these should be identical. I'm going to hide this because we don't really need it right now. In principle, these should be identical, but there's one thing that you'll notice. There's no way that these even come close to matching up, at least not in this column. So what you'll need to do is combine both of the agree statements, that is the strongly agreed percentage and the agreed percentage. Right? So if we do that, we can do that this way. We'll go into a cell, like in Argentina, click equals, and then we're going to add cell D9 and C9. Right? And then hit return, and you'll see that it adds those up. And then we can repeat that operation in this column by getting this crosshair, dragging it down. You've got to hold the mouse button to do that. And now we have it for all of the countries. This, by the way, you can just ignore. In fact, I want you to ignore it so badly, I'm just going to delete it here. All right, so now this column has what we could call agree or strongly agree. And now I'm going to hide these, so I highlight them, then I right-click, and I put hide. So let's see, Argentina adds up to about 48%. So where's Argentina on Engelhardt scale? Well, Argentina's down here, and he has them listed at 50%. What about Brazil? We got Brazil at 69%. He has Brazil at about 71%. Not exactly clear why these are different. One explanation may well be that he did something to just eliminate people over here that don't knows and everything. But we don't need to worry about it. It turns out that these are not exactly the same as what Engelhardt had, but they're pretty close, right? At least in terms of what we would call rank, right? In other words, we rank the countries. The country that's the most supportive, say China, right, at 80%, is at the top of Engelhardt's list, right? And the country at the bottom, Argentina, actually Japan, right, is at or very near the bottom of the list. So there's a little discrepancy, especially between Japan and Argentina, but again, that's reasonably close, or, you know, as they say, good enough for government work. Okay, so to avoid some confusion here, I'm going to get rid of these other columns by hiding them for now. You can delete them as well. All right, so let's, I'm going to put in these other countries that I told you were mysteriously missing in the World Values Survey website. Just believe that they're right. I got them from another place. I can show you that some other time. All right, so here's the percentages. I'm going to clean this up a little bit more. Right, so here are the percentages of different countries. One thing that you can do, this country is missing. I'm just going to get rid of that either. It's not in Engelhardt's table. So you can sort these, put them in ascending or descending order. This is a little Excel trick. You can go to data and sort. You want to sort not by column A, which is the countries. That'll put them in alphabetical order, put it by those percentages. So column E is what we're interested in here. And we're going to go from smallest to largest. But if we want to do the same as Englehart's table, we actually want to put the biggest ones on top. So we'll put largest to smallest. All right. So here we have a table that should be reasonably close to matching what Englehart produced. And we'll mess around a little bit there, and you can see what we have. So if you look at the rank orderings of countries, remember the amounts aren't exactly the same, but it's mostly pretty close. There are actually a couple of interesting things here. Czech Republic comes out looking poor. I'm not exactly sure why that is. I believe that that's actually a typo. It was supposed to be Turkey. That's my mistake. But here we have results from the World Value Survey in the 1990s, early 1990s, for these different countries. We'll look at the U.S. I'm sure everyone's interested in that. You can see the U.S. is about exactly as it says it is in English. All right. So we have some information now about support for tax increases. Now, if you remember, the argument that's made in York and Dunlap and in Englehart is that this support is, the level of support in a country is actually a function of the level of income in the country. That is, more prosperous countries have stronger demand for environmental protection than poorer countries. Now, we know, you all know to some degree, which countries are rich and which countries are poor. So you can kind of scan through the list here and see whether this matches up. Right? China is not a particularly rich country, believe it or not. And it would contradict the idea that only rich countries have high demand for environmental protection. Right? It's, in this group, it may be one of the poorest countries, especially in 1990. It's grown a lot since then. And yet it has the highest demand for environmental protection. If you've ever seen any videos of air quality in Beijing or other parts of the country, you might understand why it's 80%. And you might understand Englehart's argument about why demand for protection is high in countries, sometimes even when they're poor. And that is, if the air quality is terrible, then you might have high demand even if the country is otherwise poor. Other countries in the list, we've got Sweden, which is a rich country and it has high demand. Then we've got some countries here. Now, a more systematic way of looking at this is not to just eyeball countries, especially if you're not really sure how rich countries are, how prosperous they are. We can get information, pretty specific information, about how rich countries are. So the way that that's done in the papers, and a sort of standard way in social science research, is to look at incomes. And we typically measure income by the average gross domestic product, or the average production in a country, divided by the population of the country. We have to divide by population because big countries like China or the United States have produced a lot in aggregate, but they also have a lot of people. Right? A poor country, or a rich country, a small country like Denmark, has very low production compared to the United States or China, total production, but it has very few people, only about 6 million. So we divide GDP, or total income, by population to get a figure called GDP per capita. Now the question is, where do we get information about GDP per capita? To find that, this is also included in the text for the assignment, we can go to a website called the World Data Bank, which is produced by the World Bank, and it contains a lot of useful information on the economic situation in a lot of countries. So a lot of countries around the world. So what we're going to do here is we're going to find, and here we can look for an indicator. So GDP per capita is called an indicator. Go to this web page, we put in here GDP per capita, that's per person, and look, we get a lot of options here. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I want you to select GDP per capita in constant international dollars. Okay. Reason for that, again, it's a subject for a different class. I think you could ask William, he may remember from political economy. So we'll select that, and that will throw up for us a table. The table has GDP per capita in dollars per person, right, for several different years, especially years in the relatively recent past, say 2009, 10, etc. Okay. Got GDP per capita here for a lot of countries, many of which we're not particularly interested in, not because we don't care about Afghanistan, but because we don't have survey information about the demand for pollution in a lot of these countries. We only have it for those 30 or 40 countries that we were just looking at, right? That Engelhardt reports in his table. So what we want to do here is we want to download data. Actually, we don't want to download data. We want to select our data first. So we click on Data Bank, and that's going to let us implement some options for how to get the exact data that we need. Okay? So we look over here, and we can edit the selection of data that we get. Right? Now, you could go through here and select the different countries that you want. Okay? And I'm not going to do that here. I'm actually just going to go ahead and download all of them. And I'll select them out later. All right, so I'm just going to leave that. And then we're going to go to series, and that's basically just the series refers to the variable we're looking at. In this case, we've already selected just the one variable. You could select more, but again, we're not going to mess with that. Time, though, we're interested in. Okay. Right now, we have a table that's reporting, just reporting values for all of these countries for these years, 2004 through 2013. Okay. We're not really interested in all of those years. In fact, given the question that we're looking at was asked in 1990, we're really interested in a time period and the income in these countries that's close to 1990. So at the time that people were asked, we want to know how prosperous people. We want to know how prosperous people were when they were asked the survey question, not how prosperous they were 10 years later. So we're going to, well, we only have these to select from right now, so we need to add more to the selection. So we're going to add, give us this cute little thing that lets us choose what range of years we want to add. Now you don't need to move it down from 2013. We're going to pick a range of 1989 to 2013. We'll update. You have to remember to press update. And now we have 25 different years. Now, here again, we really don't care about all of these years. Right? We really just want a couple. So we're going to unselect all the years. Then we're going to pick 1990, which was about the time that the question was asked about taxes and the environment and the World Value Survey. I'm also going to ask you to pick a year, we'll say 2007. Right? So we're going to have 2 years selected here. You're going to use the 2007 later. So we'll update. Okay. Now it still hasn't completely updated. Go up to the top, do apply changes, and your table over here should switch. Maybe slowly. very slowly. Okay, so now we have a new table, and notice that we still have all those countries over here, but now we've only got 2 years at the top, 2 columns. One for 1990, one for 2007. Now you may notice that some countries don't have information on all these. Don't worry about that right now. We just use the data that we have. So, all right. So now we've got this. We want to download it to something that we can use on our own computer, right? Not from this web page. So we'll download this. I'm going to do it in Excel, right? You export it. Don't really worry so much about this different stuff. We want to do the whole data set. So we're going to download. We'll get this little box, of course, asking us how we want to save it. And we'll put GDP per capita. All right? And we'll save. All right. So now we are ready to combine the information from 2 different sources. We have our information on from the surveys about the percentage of the population that thinks we should pay more taxes, and we now have some information to add to that, information on income. So let's open up the income file that we just saved, and GDP per capita. Open it up. Now, you see there's a little bit of muck in here, different columns. Sometimes when you download data from these different sources, they provide a lot of series information that can be useful, right? In other words, this helps you to remember what exact information you've just downloaded. You remember it now, but if you come back a week later, you may not. So you might want to not necessarily delete this, but you want to get it out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these. I'm going to move them over here so that they're still there, but they're out of the way. All right. So what we want to do at this stage is we want to get all of the countries' income per capita in 1990 and match them up here. Now you'll notice that, so a little rearranging here, you should be able to multitask to open up the 2 different spreadsheets side by side. Hope you work a little faster. Now, we've got these ordered differently. The survey data is ordered not alphabetically, but the World Bank data is ordered alphabetically. So let's rejigger our survey data. Column A, country region. And whoops, now we went backwards. What do we do there? All right, we want to go A to Z, not Z to A. Maybe. Try again. A to Z. All right. So now we can go, and we essentially here we can just cut and paste. I wanted you to save all of the countries here and save this file because at another point in the semester we may look at some information related to income, and we'll do it for a broader set of countries, right? Some of the countries we may want their incomes because we've got some other measure of the environment, and we can refer back to this file easily and not have to go download it again from the World Bank. So that's why I want you to save it. So we'll cut and paste here. All right. So we got to find Argentina missing. Right? So when you have a missing value, so the World Bank doesn't report this data for Argentina, don't sweat it too much, just leave this blank. Right? So we have no value for Argentina. Don't put in a 0 because it's not 0. The value for Argentina is not 0. It's just unknown. Right? Austria, and you can see that this is $30,196 and 73 blah 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 cents. Right. Next country is Belarus. Belgium, etc., etc., until you get all of the countries. I'm going to go away now and come back with all of these done. Okay, so I'm back. A couple of things that you may have encountered in trying to cut and paste here. First is that there are a couple of cases where, like Argentina, there just is no income per capita data reported for the country. Estonia, Northern Ireland being key examples there, really the only two. Just leave them blank, just like with Argentina. Again, it's important to keep the columns straight, so you need to put a blank in there for Estonia. But the fact that it doesn't have an income per capita basically is going to mean that it just gets dropped when we start talking about plotting a correlation or whatever. The other couple of glitches are in the World Value Survey in 1990. They were asking the question separately in Germany, in the two Germanys, East and West, even though the country was technically reunified by then. You can see that the support rates differ between the two countries, right? So there is no GDP per capita at this time for East and West Germany, or at least not one that is an official statistic. The workaround for that is simply to blank, which is what I'm going to do here. So we just don't put in an income value for East or West Germany. A couple of other things that crop up. Name differences. If you don't know, South Korea is more technically known as the Republic of Korea, or ROK. So to find its GDP per capita in the World Bank data, you need to look under K and Rep K, right? Not S or South Korea K. Great Britain, or the United Kingdom, is similarly situated. Great Britain is how it is written in the World Value Survey. It is under United Kingdom in the World Bank income data. So you would need to scroll down and get the value there for United Kingdom. You can see the abbreviation for United Kingdom is GBR, which is Great Britain. Northern Ireland is, of course, technically part of the United Kingdom, but the World Value Survey was asking a separate survey in Northern Ireland. So they separate out Great Britain and Northern Ireland in this case. Here, I take a slightly different tack, or I'm going to suggest that you do that. Northern Ireland is trivial in size. It is poorer than the rest of the UK. So my suggestion here is just ignore Northern Ireland, leave it blank for GDP per capita. You could even delete it if you wanted to, but you can leave it there. And put in the UK GDP per capita next to Great Britain, and we'll just treat Great Britain as if Northern Ireland was added on. Their percentages of approval are pretty similar anyway, so So at this point, we now have information on two different variables for a large group of countries here. On the one hand, we have what we might consider environmental support. Okay, I'm going to call it that, but we know that it's not just that. It's really how responsive or how supportive people are of a particular question about the environment. And we have prosperity, or income per capita. Okay. And I'm going to use these more colorful labels for these variables, that is environmental support and prosperity, rather than something else. But you know, for the purposes of the analysis that we're in, that they mean something slightly different than what the label is. Now, this is so we have a measure of environmental support, we have a measure of prosperity, and the question is, the hypothesis that's been put forth by Engelhardt, or the post-materialist crowd, is, does prosperity increase support for environmental protection? Now, how do we determine that with these two columns of data? We have support per country and prosperity per country. And mathematically, there are a couple of ways that we can do this. If you've had a little statistics or econometrics or something like that, probably some ideas pop into your head immediately. You've probably done something like this before. First thing we can do is look at a correlation. So we'll look at correlation coefficient.